Welcome to New at NAMT, the next wave of musical theater writers, a series dedicated to spotlighting the emerging voices in musical theater. Every interview provides a unique glimpse into the creative minds behind the next big musicals. So, whether you're a producer, theater lover, or even simply curious about the future of musical theater, New at NAMT offers a front row seat to a new generation of writers. It's time to lower the lights, raise the curtain, and LX1, go on New at NAMT. I am your host, Jean-Paul Yovanoff from Musical Theater Radio, and joining me each week is a rotating cast of NAMT alumni writers as our co-hosts. Before we get to today's interview, let's welcome this week's co-host, Shannon Burkett. Shannon, how are you today?
Fabulous. Excited to be here. I saw the hilarious Titanic last night with the incredible Dee as Celine, and she really is a gift from the goddesses. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm going to see Titanic hopefully in February of next year.
Ooh.
It's playing in Toronto, it's playing in Montreal, and then coming to Toronto. So I'm excited to go see that as well. So good that you liked it. That means I'm probably going to like it then. So that
Yeah,
works out.
it's such a joy. Like it's so funny, and the voices just knock you over. Really, honestly, the talent just knocks you over.
Awesome. Awesome. So now before we get to our guests, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to.
Well, I am a writer, director, producer, actor. And right now I'm taking a multi-platform approach with my work, and I turned one of my musicals into a TV series. And I produced and directed a stop motion animated short with Neil Burns, who is based in Toronto. Actually, that Dee sang the song in, and this short has gotten into over 20 film festivals, including several Oscar qualifiers. And actually, Stop Motion Productions in Toronto is producing the second proof of concept, and Neil and I are working on the preliminary, concept drawings for the characters. My musical that actually was in NAMT in 2022, The Female Pope, which I'm working on with the prolific and brilliant Heather Christian, just won the Pipeline Arts Foundation Award, which came with a presentation produced by the new group at the Signature this past June. And we went to ground floor at Berkeley Rep, and Berkeley Rep is just the most wonderful place to work, and we did a lot of rewrites there. And my son Cooper and I are working on a documentary and a play. He was diagnosed with lead poisoning as a baby, and we've been doing a lot of advocacy work in 2023 with different organizations. We passed 3 different laws, and we're working on the Lead Paint Right to Know Act and trying to get it passed for 2025. And his film just got into Woodstock.
You've been busy.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's been a
That's
fun
awesome.
year. It's been a fun
Nice.
year.
Awesome. Well, now that we've met our co-host, let's get into the interview itself. Today we are speaking with Parisa Shahmir, the creator of the musical Medusa. When you hear the name Medusa, what is the first thought that springs to mind? Mortal or monster? Victim or villain? Beguiler or betrayed? This folk-inspired musical retelling of the ancient Greek myth reclaims the narrative and gives Medusa the space to be the heroine of her own story. As Medusa sets out on a journey orchestrated by Hermes the trickster at the will of Zeus, the king of the gods, she soon realizes that the part history has written for her is inescapable if it is the gods themselves who wield the pen. The only power she has is her voice, raw and powerful, which she will use to leave behind a legacy of strength, courage, and truth. Parisa, welcome to New at NAMP.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Now, before we get to talking about the musical, I'd love to have you introduce yourself to the listeners.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Parisa Shahmir. I'm a British Iranian singer, songwriter, actress, and musical composer from London. I've been performing in the musical theatre industry as an actress myself for the past 10 years. And then within that time, whilst on tour with Mamma Mia, which was my first professional acting job in 2014, I began songwriting. And I've been writing and releasing my own music ever since, alongside performing in theatre. And in 2021, something really magical happened, and I was able to kind of combine those two loves of musical theatre and writing. And I was doing a show called Fisherman's Friends, which actually did a UK tour, and we did a stint in Toronto also, which was incredible. And during the development run of that show, a song that I'd written was heard by the creative team and added into the show and sang by the character which I also played, who was a songwriter herself. The song is called The Tidal Pool, and it's now on the original cast recording, which is available wherever you listen to your music. So that was a really beautiful experience to kind of combine those two passions of mine. And then whilst on tour with Fisherman's Friends 2022, 2023, and having a lot of conversations with colleagues, and a few times people dropping into conversations like, well, have you ever thought of writing a whole musical? I kind of thought, sure, let's give it a go. And so March last year in 2023 was when I started writing Medusa, my debut musical, which is now being featured at NAMT this year alongside 7 other incredible shows, which feels amazing and mind-boggling at the same time. But yeah, that's me.
Can you tell us what inspired you specifically to reimagine Medusa's story and what you hope audiences will take away from this new perspective?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Medusa was initially inspired by this incredible book called Cassandra Speaks by Elizabeth Lesser. And that book kind of examines the depiction of women in ancient history, mythology, biblical stories. And so after reading that book, I felt really inspired to create a piece that explores kind of the complexity of stories, who's telling them, through which perspective they're being told, and then which perspective we're kind of digesting as the audience. And so with this musical, I really intend to kind of challenge the classic patriarchal portrayal of Medusa as villain and monster, and instead explore the experience of a real woman behind these labels. And my hope is that, being an actress as well in musical theatre, I often found it a little frustrating how there's so many musicals out there that center around female characters, but are written by those who don't have a real life understanding of the female experience. So as a writer, stories about women by women is something that I'm really passionate about. And I hope that by doing this through Medusa and beyond, those who do identify as female feel inspired to speak their truth, rewrite old narratives, and reclaim their stories.
You've integrated folk music with a touch of Middle Eastern influence into the score for Medusa. How do these musical styles enhance the storytelling and thematic depth of the musical? And what do they bring to the portrayal of Medusa's character?
That's a great question. I think they bring a real rawness, a realness, and a kind of authenticity. I think so much of that sound, in both the kind of folk tradition and in that more Middle Eastern-esque kind of performance, there's a real kind of visceralness to it. And in this story, which I think is quite visceral, I think it gives just something like an edge. I can't really explain it, but come and see the show at NAMT, and maybe you'll know what I mean. But yeah, I really think that these sounds and kind of some instruments that maybe you're not usually hearing on stages as much, or certain kind of vocal stylings that you may not usually hear as much within musical theatre, kind of help to make it all quite musically dynamic. And the language of the piece is also completely sung through. Folk music meets folklore was kind of another inspiration for this piece. So it was quite important to me that music is very much the driving force of the piece. And then also just touching on the Middle Eastern influence as well, so I am half Iranian on my dad's side. And I actually think that a lot of the Middle Eastern influence was a little subconscious. Being a performer myself, obviously my performance style definitely influenced the creation of the music. But when I sit back and think about it, I actually think that these kind of influences of Middle Eastern-esque vibe give the piece even more depth and resonance when you think about the recent happenings in Iran with women life freedom, for example, and women fighting for their rights, for a voice, for a choice, for freedom. And that's kind of what this musical is all about. It's about women kind of having a say, women getting their voices heard. And I think that that's now really married into this really rich kind of tapestry of music that really lends itself to the piece.
The concept of reclaiming narratives and giving Medusa a voice is central to the show. Can you discuss how Medusa addresses themes of female empowerment and how they reclaim those stories?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, within the piece, there's a lot of reference to kind of this is the way the story's been written, even as the piece goes along, and Medusa's told that a few times, and the kind of inescapability of that within her experience. She's a victim of fate, and this is kind of where the political edge of the musical comes into play a little. The story is written by the system she exists within. And so she is a pawn within that. And in the second song in the show, there's actually a lyric which I think kind of encapsulates the whole premise of the show, which is, this is a story we can't change, but we can change the way it's told. And that's what this piece seeks to do. It's not a piece which seeks to kind of change the circumstances of the story or the facts of what happened, but rather it's a piece that seeks to change the way it's perceived by the audience, because they're seeing it from another point of view, and that point of view being through the lens of a woman. So yeah, my aim and my intention is for the audience to witness a woman who has been villainized and has been sensationalized in history and mythology, and to feel empathy for her and to see her as a human being and not some scary snake-haired monster, and kind of really sit with the premise that like history isn't what happened, it's who told the story and who did create that story in the past, and then what do we then kind of take on as women hearing those stories, you know, growing up or existing within the world, and kind of questioning that and realizing, oh, there's probably a different point of view here, and I wonder what that is.
I'd love to hear a little bit about the developmental history of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned earlier, I began writing Medusa just maybe a year and a half ago now, whilst on tour with Fisherman's Friends. So that was in March 2023. I tend to work quite quickly when I write. Once I get on a roll, I'm really heading home with it. So after a couple of months, by about August of 2023, I'd finished kind of a rough first draft, and then collaborated with a really great musician friend of mine who's turned into the orchestrator for the piece, to create a kind of concept album, which kind of continues to shift and change and grow as the piece develops. So it's not something that's in the public domain yet, but it's something which it really helps to encapsulate the life of the piece, and you know, to be able to share with people as we seek to get this piece to the places that it needs to go. This year in February 2024, I received a grant from Help Musicians UK, which is a music charity, and with that money I was able to fund and self-produce an industry showcase in London in April, which was amazing. We performed a 1 hour condensed version of the show to an industry audience, which was really well received. And then about 2 months later, I found out that that the show was coming to NAMT. So it's been a jam-packed year for a very new piece, but I feel really grateful and to kind of have this opportunity at NAMT and see where we go from here.
Speaking of NAMT and looking ahead to the festival and beyond, what are your goals for Medusa? And how do you envision the musical evolving? And what do you hope is next for the show?
Sure. So you know, this show is quite new in terms of creation. That being said, I do pride myself on kind of the efficiency and momentum in creating and developing a piece of work. And I do believe that now the piece is kind of at the perfect stage to explore opportunities for a full stage workshop or development production, to be able to kind of really delve into particularly the dramaturgy of the piece, and just yes, solidifying it and making it the best piece that it possibly can be before then taking it to that next stage. So personally, I'm really passionate about creating connections with theatres and producing partners across the UK, across the US, across internationally, who are inspired by the story and the story that we're trying to tell, the message behind it, and who want to work together to share this powerful story with audiences worldwide. I believe that this piece has a wildly universal story that needs to be told now more than ever in today's society. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to meeting some of those potential collaborators in the following months, and yeah, helping create art that inspires, empowers, and helps create meaningful change.
The show sounds fantastic. I can't wait to see it in October. And I love the fact whenever musicals incorporate other sounds of music, because musical theater is no longer one sound, it's any sound. And I look forward to hearing that on stage at NAMT. Where can people learn more about you before the NAMT Festival? You know, the websites, the socials, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's information about NAMT that will take you through to the NAMT page on my website, which is www.itsparisamusic.com. That's it's and then Paris with an A at the end, music.com. And it's Parisa Music is also my Instagram handle as well, where kind of that's my main social media outlet. I also have music on Spotify, again, that I've kind of been writing and recording for the last 10 years. So that's under Parisa, that's my artist name.
Thank you, Parisa, for joining us today and introducing the listeners and the two of us to musical Medusa.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to see you at the festival.
Wonderful. And of course, we also want to thank this week's incredible host, Shannon, for joining us today as well.
Thank you for having me.
So once again, I am your host, Jean-Paul Yovanoff, on behalf of NAMT and MTR. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you in the theater.